again. My name's Tony Hilliard. Today we're going to show you how to rebuild an SU electric fuel pump. This is a low pressure one, usually supplied before 1985. Let's see how we get on.
This is the fuel pump we're going to repair. To make the video as short as possible, I've already slackened off the screws and all the nuts. This is the repair kit as supplied by SU. We have new set of points, washers, nuts, etc. New diaphragm, new coil spring, and a couple of new gaskets. As always, there's a set of instructions. It's always a good idea, even if you've done this before, to double check there have been no changes. We start by taking the fuel filter out. Invariably there's lots of cushionery or dead things in there. We take off the inlet connection. Now we take off the outlet connection. Inside we can see the non-return valve. Cleanliness while rebuilding this fuel pump is essential, by the way. Remove the electrical connection at the top. Remove the plastic cover. Inside you'll now see the point system and what they call the rocker mechanism, which we'll come to a little bit later. First we remove the screw that holds the contacts in place. We remove the 2BA nut on the connection bolt. It's usually quite stiff because underneath this nut is a lead washer. The lead washer is to make sure you get a really good connection. Now that lead washer leaves a residue on the thread, so getting the nut off can be a bit of a pain. The brass 2BA bolt that we're undoing the nut from has a square end. It sits in the pedestal to stop it turning. But of course as soon as you start taking the nut off, it all flops about, so quite often you have to put a screwdriver underneath it to hold it into position to make it a little bit easier. Then you unscrew what's left of the old lead washer. Now we remove the two screws that hold what they call the pedestal on the top. The pedestal is made of plastic and it's a little bit fragile, so be very careful with it. Remove the pedestal and the electrical connections. You need to pull out the hardened pin. It's part of the toggle mechanism. When you refit this, make sure you fit a new hardened pin. If you fit anything else, it will wear out very quickly. Have your pedestal. That is the rocker mechanism, also called the toggle mechanism, in operation there. You can see the double contact points there where this is what usually goes wrong with these pumps. They finally burn out. I like to scribe right across the joints so that when it comes to reassembling, you've at least got a guide of how the thing went together. Remove the screws that hold coil body to the alloy base. It's quite a difficult thing to separate, so you can see why you need new gaskets. By the way, when you're reassembling this with the new gaskets, whatever you do, don't use gasket cement, because there's a good chance you're going to have to take it apart a few times before you get it right. Carefully use a sharp blade to separate the coil body from the diaphragm. Be very careful not to damage the diaphragm, just in case you need it later. Peel off the diaphragm from the coil body. Now you need to unscrew the diaphragm so that it detaches itself from the toggle mechanism on top. Gently remove the diaphragm and the spring from the coil body. Check the diaphragm for excessive wear. Now we're going to start to reassemble the toggle mechanism. Now this could be quite fiddly. You're going to have to insert the hardened steel pin and line up the 6 holes. It takes a little bit of patience. When you're assembling this top part of the electric fuel pump, you have to remember that hardened steel pin is kept in position by the plastic cap that's finally fitted. So all the time you're working on this, keep an eye that the hardened steel pin doesn't drop out. Just make sure that the toggle mechanism works freely. Next we insert the brass 2BA bolt with the square end. As you'll probably notice, as I'm assembling this, the old parts I've actually cleaned and, if necessary, painted. Alloy base parts I've sandblasted. Next we insert a washer onto the brass 2BA bolt. Position the pedestal over the top of the coil body and generally line it up. This is where we slip the power wire to the points, gently over the top. It's very, very fragile, so do be careful. This is the lead washer that I mentioned. Very, very important to make sure you get a good electrical connection. This has to go on next, on top of the power wire. Now this is a special nut that goes on next. It's cone shaped underneath. The cone shape should go downwards so that as you tighten it up with the nut, the cone shape is going to push and expand the lead washer to make sure you get that good connection. Now we put on the 2BA brass nut, wind it down carefully and very, very gently tighten it up. Now the washer I'm just putting on, it suggests this in the instructions. In fact, it depends which plastic cap you've got, whether you put this washer on or not. The best way is to put the washer on, try the cap. If the cap is too far away, take the washer off and try the cap again. Now we put the 2 screws in that hold the pedestal onto the coil body. Again, don't over tighten, you'll break the pedestal. Now I don't know if you've seen the deliberate mistake, or should I say the first mistake of the day. I put the 1 screw on and I should have actually connected it to the earth wire. The earth wire is very fine, and again, as you'll see, I'll take the screw out, put the earth wire on and then connect it back up again. Next we have the new diaphragm. We're going to fit the new spring with the large end of the spring towards the coil body. Before you try and screw the shaft in the center of the diaphragm, into the trunnion or the threaded part in the rocker or toggle mechanism. You need to make sure that the little neoprene washer is on that shaft. This acts as like a bump stop, so as the diaphragm is going up and down, it doesn't slam into the bottom of the coil body. With some patience, you'll find you'll make the connection on the thread, and you gently turn the diaphragm so it screws into the toggle body. This is the sort of situation that when you read it on an instruction sheet, it makes no sense, but it's so much easier if you can see it done on a video. By pushing the diaphragm gently up and down, you can make the toggle throw over. This goes up to one side, down to the other side. We'll see how that goes a little bit later. Now this could be really fiddly, but with a little bit of practice, you'll see. If it doesn't work, screw it a little bit more, try it again, push the centre of the diaphragm in, let it come out. This is going backwards and forwards on the spring inside. Finally, you'll get the toggle body to go throw over. You'll see it, it'll go click, 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 click. And this is the sound that you get when the pump is working finally. Once you're happy that the toggle mechanism is throwing over, now unscrew the diaphragm to the nearest hole to the left. Again, another 4 holes. That's 2/3 of a complete turn. The diaphragm is now completely set. So say the instructions. But in reality, you'll have to assemble it, try it. If it doesn't work, take it apart, screw it back another hole or 2, and keep doing that until you get it just right. Now it's very likely, if it's an older pump, there is an armature guide plate. This is a plastic ring with discs on it, is the best way I can describe it. It clips round the diaphragm and it keeps it central as it goes in and out on the coil body. Now in the new kit, it's very likely they'll be supplied with little brass discs. You're supposed to insert these all the way around, and this is supposed to do the same job. Frankly, I always use the old part. The old part is very easy, it just clips in. Why they changed it, I have no idea. Now we need to install the contact blade. First of all, we put the screw and washer through the power wire, start to screw that into the top of the pedestal, and then the actual contact blade has got a fork on the end that slides in underneath the screw and washer. Gently tighten the screw up, and the ideal situation is if you can get the contact blade just little above the contact points below on the rocker when the points are closed. What happens now is as the pump operates, the points will wipe each other and keep each other clean. Bit fiddly to do, but it's worth the trouble. Tighten the contact blade attachment screw when the contact is obtained. Check when the outer rocker is pressed onto the coil housing and the contact blade rests on the narrow rib or ridge which projects slightly above the main face of the pedestal. You're going to need to do this carefully as we want to adjust the gap on the points and the bottom of the pedestal with a set of feeler gauges. You want to make sure that the power feed wire is tucked away nicely, because as you put the plastic cap on, it'll foul it. Now this is a line drawing from the SU Carburetor Company workshop manual. It shows beautifully which parts we're going to adjust with our feeler gauges. You see A at the top is going to have to be 0.9 millimeters or 35 thou of an inch, and B is going to have to be 2.3 millimeters or 90 thou. I've marked them in red because it's very difficult to explain this without seeing a diagram. X red part marked at the top, that can be bent very slightly up or down to get the right adjustment for A. Y on the diagram can be bent up or down to get the right adjustment for B. Now we want 90 thou or 2.3 millimeters for the bottom foot. A little bit tight, so we just adjust that one. In this instance you can use a screwdriver very gently. Now for the top one we want 35 thousandths of an inch. My lucky day, exactly right. Now we assemble the bottom part with new gaskets. As I said before, don't use gasket cement. Do a test run with 12 volt supply. This pump is off my Riley, which has a negative earth. No, she's not working correctly. The points are not throwing over. Obviously I've adjusted something incorrectly, so we take it apart again. Hence, no gasket cement. I'll just unwind the diaphragm a little bit, try it again, make sure that the point system at the top is throwing over correctly. No, I'll just unwind it a little bit more. That looks more like it, we'll give that a try. That's the sound we should be hearing. That's the sound that when the pump is fitted to your car, you hear this tick, 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 tick until she pumps up fuel, and then she'll just go tick, tick as she continues to keep the pressure on. That's the side view of the point system throwing over. This is the possible fit problem. When the plastic cap is fitted, if the gap is too great between the plastic cap and the coil body, you need to take that extra washer out. And you put a washer on the outside, put the 4BA nut on. Don't forget, don't over tighten it, this is plastic. Now we're going to reinstall the new fuel filter on the bottom, plus the fibre washer, plus the outside nut. Next, it's time to fit the non-return valve. Next, we want to install the brass disc in the cage for the non-return valve, the smooth side towards the valve seat. Next is the retaining spring. Now be warned, be very careful installing this spring. If you don't get it right, it will go ping and you'll spend the rest of the day crawling around on your hands and knees trying to find it. First we want the thin fibre washer. Next we install the first brass disc. Next the valve disc cage inserted so you can see the spring when it is fitted into the pump. Then we fit the final fibre washer and the outlet fitting. Then we fit the fibre washer onto the inlet fitting and screw the inlet fitting into the aluminium body. Next we put some electrical tape around the joint between the plastic top and the coil body to keep any moisture out. Finally fit the outlet fitting.
Well, I hope you found that useful. Until next time, cheerio!